I never thought one stupid joke could destroy everything we'd built. When my wife casually said her ex was better in bed, something snapped inside me. 5 years of marriage, and suddenly I was questioning everything. Who was this mystery ex? Why was she still thinking about him? The dark hair I found on our couch wasn't hers. The password-protected emails. Those Thursday work meetings that always ran late. As I followed her across town that rainy evening, my heart hammering in my chest, I never imagined the gut-wrenching truth waiting for me, or how it would force me to confront the man I'd become. They say pride comes before a fall, but nobody tells you about the secrets you uncover on the way down. My name is Ethan Mitchell. I'm 37 years old, and I've been working as a yacht engineer at Atlantic Marine for the past decade. It's a good gig, steady pay, respect from the guys at the shipyard, and the satisfaction of seeing these luxury vessels come alive under my hands. That's how I met Olivia, actually. She came to do a feature on the craftsman behind America's luxury toys for Coastal Living magazine. I was the guy they picked to interview, and man, when she walked into that workshop with her recorder and notebook, I nearly drilled a hole through my thumb. 5 years of marriage later, I thought we had it good. No, better than good. I thought we had it great. We lived in a decent house in Charleston with a view of the harbor. We had friends, weekend barbecues, plans to start trying for a kid soon. And we had this little game between us that started way back when we were dating. See, I had this habit of bragging about my skills in the bedroom. Not to other people, I'm not that kind of jerk, but to Olivia. I'd drop these ridiculous lines about making her see stars or speak in tongues, and she'd laugh that laugh that lit up her whole face. It was our thing, you know, just playful banter that kept the spark alive. At least that's what I thought. That night, in April started like any other Tuesday. I'd wrapped up a big project at work, a custom navigation system for some tech mobiles yacht, and was feeling pretty damn good about myself. Olivia had been working on a series about women entrepreneurs, and she looked beat. She kicked off her heels by the door and collapsed on our couch, scrolling through her phone while the TV played some home renovation show neither of us was watching. I grabbed us both a beer from the fridge and sat down next to her, that familiar surge of pride and affection rising in my chest as I looked at my wife. I put my arm around her shoulder and pulled her close, already starting up our usual game. You know, I said, grinning down at her, I think we should celebrate my project completion with a special performance tonight. I've been told my encores make women forget their own names. She smiled weakly, but something was off. There was a tightness around her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. But being the blockhead I sometimes am, I didn't stop there. Come on, babe. I pressed on, flexing my arm playfully. Don't act like you're not impressed by the Mitchell magic. That's when she put down her phone, looked me dead in the eye, and said the words that would crack our life wide open. My ex was always better than you in bed, Ethan. Time froze. Her words hung in the air between us like a physical thing. I felt my smile fade, replaced by something cold and unfamiliar. The TV droned on in the background, but all I could hear was that sentence replaying in my head. My ex was always better than you in bed, Ethan. I waited for her laugh, for the just kidding that would make this another one of our jokes. It never came. Instead, I watched as her own expression shifted from defiance to shock, like she couldn't believe what had just come out of her mouth. What did you just say? My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan, I didn't mean. I stood up abruptly, beer sloshing over the rim of my bottle onto our rug. I barely noticed. No, don't. Without another word, I walked out of the living room, down the hall, and into our home office. I closed the door behind me with a soft click that somehow felt more final than if I'd slammed it. I sat in the dark, staring at the screensaver on my computer. Ironically, a slideshow of photos from our vacation to the Bahamas last year. My mind was racing. Had she been comparing me to her ex this whole time? Was she thinking about him when we were together? Was our entire relationship just a second-best consolation prize? And who was she even talking about? That pretentious photographer Craig she dated in college? Or maybe Jason, her high school sweetheart? She'd never talked much about her exes, and I'd always taken that as a good sign. Now I wonder if she'd been hiding her true feelings all along. A soft knock on the door jerked me back to reality. Ethan, can we talk about this? Not now. My voice was flat, final. Please, it was just a stupid joke. I was trying to. I said not now. The edge of my tone surprised even me. I heard her sigh, then the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hall. I should have gone after her. I should have talked it out right then. But my pride was wounded, and something darker than pride was taking root: suspicion. I remembered finding a text on her phone a month ago from someone named Alex. I'd glimpsed it while she was in the shower. Nothing explicit, just miss our talks. Coffee soon. She'd never mentioned anyone named Alex, and I hadn't asked. I trusted her. Now that trust felt like a bad bet. I spent the night on the couch in the office, telling myself I needed space to cool off. The truth was, I couldn't stand the thought of lying next to her, wondering if she was comparing me to someone else, someone better. The next morning, I got up early and left for work without waking her. The guys at the shipyard immediately noticed something was off. "You look like hell, Mitchell," my buddy Dave commented as I fumbled with a wiring schematic. "Rough night." Something like that. I muttered, not meeting his eyes. I threw myself into work, focusing on the complex electrical system of a 90-foot yacht like my life depended on it. Around noon, my phone buzzed with Olivia's name. I ignored it. Then again, and again. Finally, I turned my phone off completely. When I got home that evening, I'd expected to find Olivia waiting, ready to talk things through. Instead, the house was empty. A note on the counter read, "Staying at Jen's tonight. Call me when you're ready to talk." I'm so sorry. It wasn't what you think. Wasn't what I think. What exactly did she think I was thinking? And what did she mean by staying at Jen's? Was that code for something else? I crumpled the note and threw it across the kitchen. Then, feeling slightly childish, I retrieved it and smoothed it out, studying her handwriting like it might reveal some hidden truth. That's when I spotted it. A long, dark brown hair on our couch. Olivia's hair was blonde, shoulder length. This hair was at least twice as long. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe one of her interview subjects. Maybe Jen had visited earlier. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and that night, alone in our too-big bed, it began to grow. The next 3 days passed in a fog of suspicion and resentment. Olivia came home the following morning, attempting to talk, but I kept our interactions brief and cold. "I need time," I told her, and she nodded, her eyes filled with a sadness that only fueled my anger. Why was she sad? She was the one who dropped the bomb. At work, I was distracted, nearly shorting out an expensive navigation system. My boss noticed, suggested I take a day off. Instead, I took 2, telling Olivia I was on a business trip to inspect a yacht in Savannah. The lie came easily, surprising me. In reality, I stayed at a motel off Highway 17, stewing in my thoughts and doing something I never thought I'd do: investigating my wife. The hair I'd found bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I created a spreadsheet of Olivia's recent late nights at work and coffee with friends. Seeing the pattern laid out made my stomach turn. Every Thursday, she was unavailable. Meeting deadlines, she'd said. But now I wondered. I checked her phone records. Multiple calls to a number I didn't recognize. Always on Thursdays. I reverse searched it. James Alexander. The name meant nothing to me, but Alex certainly connected some dots. Thursday came again. I told Olivia I had an evening shift at the marina. Another lie. Instead, I parked across from her office in a borrowed truck, waiting. At 6:30, I watched her exit the building, checking her reflection in a window, fixing her hair. My heart hammered as she walked not to her car, but 2 blocks over to a cafe. Through the window, I saw her greet someone, a tall man with dark hair, pulled back in a man bun. They hugged, not briefly like friends, but lingering. They sat close, talking intently. At one point, he reached across the table and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. I nearly stormed in right then, but something held me back. The man looked familiar somehow. I snapped a photo with my phone, then drove back to our neighborhood, mind racing, hands shaking on the wheel. That night, I pretended to be asleep when Olivia came to bed. She hesitated by my side of the bed, then sighed and moved away. Once I heard her breathing steady, I slipped out to the home office. I opened her laptop. We knew each other's passwords, or at least I thought we did. Her usual one didn't work. This new password protection felt like confirmation of my worst fears. After 3 failed attempts, I tried something. James Alex. It worked. My blood went cold. Her email opened, and I scrolled, heart pounding. until I found exchanges with James.Alexander at coastal-arts.org. Their messages were professional at first glance. Discussions about a photography exhibition, interview questions. But reading closer, I caught undertones, inside jokes, a familiarity that felt intimate. Then I found it, a folder labeled simply EA. Inside were dozens of photos. The man from the cafe, sometimes alone, sometimes with Olivia. In one, they stood together on a beach at sunset, his arm around her waist, both laughing at the camera. The timestamp, 3 weeks before a wedding. I couldn't sleep that night. Those photos kept flashing behind my eyelids. Olivia and this James Alexander, looking so comfortable together. The timestamp tormented me. 3 weeks before a wedding. Who the hell was this guy? Morning found me bleary-eyed at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, when Olivia entered. She startled seeing me there, then approached cautiously. "Ethan, we need to talk." "Yes," I agreed, surprising her. "We do. Let's start with who James Alexander is." Her face drained of color. "How do you know about your secret meetings every Thursday? Know that you've been lying to me? That you've known him since before a wedding?" My voice remained eerily calm while my insides twisted. "Or maybe you'd like to explain these." I placed my phone on the table, displaying the photos I'd found on her laptop. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You went through my computer? My private files?" "Don't turn this around, Olivia. Who is he?" She sat heavily, shoulders slumping. "He's a photographer I met during a story I was working on 5 years ago, about coastal artists. The same story you were working on when you met me." I noted flatly. She nodded. "You were my last interview that week. James was my first." Something cracked inside me. "So, I was just the bookend to a week of what? Sleeping with photographers?" "No." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "James and I dated briefly, yes. But it was already ending when I met you. These photos," I held up my phone, "are from 3 weeks before our wedding. That doesn't look like ending to me." Olivia closed her eyes. "He contacted me again a few months ago. He's been going through some tough times, and he needed a friend." "A friend," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" "Nothing happened, Ethan." "But you wanted it to," I said, a statement more than a question. "That's why you said what you said. You've been thinking about him, comparing us." "That's not true." Her voice cracked. "My comment was stupid, thoughtless. I was just tired of your constant bragging about that. I wanted to take you down a peg. By telling me your ex was better." I laughed bitterly. "Mission accomplished, Liv. Consider me thoroughly taken down." I stood, grabbing my keys. She caught my arm. "Where are you going?" "To see Dave. I need space." "Ethan, please. James is dying. Leukemia. That's why we've been meeting." I froze. "What?" "He has no family here. I've been helping him navigate treatment options. That's all." I shook my head, pulling away. "I don't believe you. And even if it's true, you still lied. For months." As I walked out, her last words followed me. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this." At Dave's house, as I nursed a beer and spilled the whole story, a text came from an unknown number. "This is James Alexander. We need to talk about Olivia." I stared at the text message for a full 5 minutes while Dave rambled about how I should kick her to the curb. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Finally, I typed, "Where and when?" The response came instantly. "Charleston Harbor Marina. Slip 42. Now if possible." My heart pounded as I made excuses to Dave and drove to the marina. I knew that slip. It belonged to a modest sailboat called Second Wind that had been docked there for months. I'd admired it from afar, but never seen its owner. As I approached, I spotted a thin man with dark hair sitting on the deck. Even from a distance, I could see how illness had ravaged him. His skin had a grayish pallor, and his clothes hung loosely on his frame. This was the man I'd been jealous of. He looked like he could barely stand. "Ethan Mitchell," he called weakly. "Come aboard. We're long overdue for a conversation." I boarded reluctantly, keeping my distance. "You said you wanted to talk about Olivia." James nodded, gesturing to a seat across from him. "She doesn't know I'm doing this. She'd be furious if she knew." "Why?" I demanded. "Because you're revealing your affair?" He laughed, a sound that dissolved into a coughing fit. When he recovered, he fixed me with penetrating eyes. "There is no affair, Mitchell. There never was. At least, not since you came into the picture." "I saw the photos," I said flatly. "You and her, 3 weeks before our wedding. Ah, he nodded. The farewell weekend. The what? James pulled out his phone, tapped through some pictures, then handed it to me. It showed the same beach from the photos I'd seen, but zoomed out. Olivia and James were there. Yes, but so were 8 other people. That was my goodbye party. I was moving to Oregon the next day. All my friends from the arts community came to see me off. I scrolled through more photos, seeing the wider context that Olivia's carefully cropped versions had hidden. A group celebration, not a romantic getaway. Why did she save these pictures? Why meet with you secretly? I asked, still suspicious. James sighed heavily. Because 6 months ago, I came back to Charleston to die, Ethan. Acute myeloid leukemia. The treatments in Oregon failed. He pulled back his sleeve, revealing a medical port in his arm. Olivia's been helping me navigate hospice options, connecting me with specialists. She didn't tell you because... He hesitated. Because what? Because I asked her not to. His gaze was direct. I didn't want to be the dying ex-boyfriend, a burden on her new life. She argued, but respected my wish for privacy, even when it caused problems with you. I felt sick. So all those Thursday meetings were helping me review medical options, get my affairs in order, sometimes just sitting with me through chemo when no one else could. His expression hardened, and in return, I made her life hell by swearing her to secrecy. I sat in stunned silence, shame washing over me. Olivia loves you, James said quietly. What she said to you, that was wrong. But ask yourself, how many times did you push her to the breaking point with your, shall we say, theatrical confidence? I had no answer for that. I left James's boat with my worldview completely upended. Everything I'd suspected, every scenario I constructed in my mind, had been wrong. My wife wasn't cheating. She was supporting a dying friend who had once been more than a friend. And I'd responded with suspicion, accusations, an invasion of her privacy. I drove home in a daze, rehearsing apologies that felt woefully inadequate. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Olivia's car was gone. A note on the door read, "At my sister's. Call me when you're ready to talk." I texted her immediately. "I'm ready. Please come home." While waiting, I paced our living room, replaying our argument and everything that followed. James's words echoed in my mind. How many times did you push her to the breaking point? The truth hit me like a sucker punch. My game of boasting about my prowess wasn't the harmless fun I'd imagined. It was a constant, repeated assertion of superiority that had gradually worn her down. What I saw as playful banter, she experienced as pressure to validate me, to respond with admiration, to never challenge the image I'd created of myself. When Olivia arrived an hour later, her eyes were red-rimmed and wary. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed protectively over her chest. "You wanted to talk," she said flatly. "I met with James." Her eyes widened. "He contacted you? Why would he?" "Because he cares about you," I interrupted. "And he didn't want my stupidity to ruin our marriage." "Your stupidity?" A flicker of surprise crossed her face. I gestured for her to sit. When she did, I remained standing, unable to contain my nervous energy. "Liv, I've been an idiot. I jumped to the worst conclusions, invaded your privacy, accused you of things you didn't do. I ran a hand through my hair. All because my ego couldn't handle one comment. A comment I probably deserved after years of, what did James call it? Theatrical confidence." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, then vanished. "Why didn't you just talk to me, Ethan? Ask me directly about James instead of sneaking around like a detective." Pride, I admitted. Wounded, stupid male pride. It was easier to assume the worst than to ask questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. She nodded slowly. "James is dying, Ethan. He's got maybe 3 months." "I know. He told me." I finally sat beside her, not touching, but close. "What I don't know is why you kept it from me. Did you think I wouldn't understand?" Olivia sighed deeply. "At first, it was about respecting his privacy. Then," she hesitated, "then I was afraid you'd be jealous, even though there's nothing to be jealous of. And then it had gone on so long that telling you felt impossible. Because of how I'd react, I finished for her. Like the insecure jerk I proved myself to be." "That's not fair," she said softly. "I should have told you anyway. Marriage shouldn't have secrets like this." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of mutual mistakes heavy between us. About what I said, Olivia finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. It was cruel and untrue. I just wanted you to stop making everything about your performance, like that's all that matters between us. I get it now, I said. I've been making our intimacy about my ego, not about us. Our conversation lasted deep into the night. We talked more honestly than we had in years, perhaps ever. I listened without interrupting, without judgment, a skill I realized I'd neglected for too long. There's something else you should know, Olivia said as night turned toward morning. What is it? I asked, trying to stay calm. She took a deep breath. Remember that weekend I went to New York for the magazine conference 3 months ago? I nodded. She'd been gone for 4 days, calling each night to check in. There was no conference, she said quietly. I was with James at Memorial Sloan Kettering. He was getting a second opinion, and he needed someone there when they delivered the news. I felt a twinge of hurt, but understanding prevailed. That was when he found out it was terminal. She nodded, tears welling. 3 to 6 months, they said. He didn't want to die in Oregon, alone. That's why he moved back here. Why didn't you tell me then? I would have understood. Because I was already keeping so many secrets by that point. And because I was afraid. Of what? I reached for her hand. That you'd see how much I still care about him, and misinterpret it. The old me would have been jealous. The new me just felt sad that I'd created an environment where my wife was afraid to show compassion for a dying friend. I'm sorry I made you feel that way, I said. I want to be the kind of husband you can tell anything to. She smiled weakly. Does that mean you forgive me? For what I said about, you know? There's nothing to forgive, I said honestly. I needed that wake-up call. She leaned against me, exhausted. Where do we go from here? First, we're going to help James through whatever time he has left. Together. Then we're going to work on us, building something real, not some performance. The next morning, I called Dave to explain I wouldn't need his couch anymore. He responded with skepticism. You taking her back? After what she said? Man, you're whipped. It's not about taking her back, I said, irritated by his simplistic view. It's about understanding what went wrong and fixing it. Together. Dave snorted. Sure, buddy. Let me know when she walks all over you again. I hung up, realizing some friendships might not survive the man I was becoming. Later that day, Olivia and I visited James on his boat. The contrast between the suspicion of my last visit and the openness of this one couldn't have been more stark. This time, we brought dinner, takeout from his favorite seafood place, and sat together on deck, watching the sunset over Charleston Harbor. James was having a good day, his eyes bright despite his gaunt appearance. He told stories about his photography adventures that had us laughing until tears came. When Olivia went below deck to make coffee, he turned to me. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? I'm the one who should be thanking you. He shook his head. For making her happy. Despite recent complications, I've never seen her as content as she's been with you. His words hit me hard. I haven't been the husband she deserves. None of us are perfect, he replied. But you listened when it mattered. That's rare. As we drove home, Olivia's phone rang. Her expression changed as she listened. Then she pulled over abruptly. We'll be right there, she said, ending the call and turning to me with panic in her eyes. James collapsed. He's being taken to Charleston Memorial. The next 12 hours were a blur of hospital corridors, hushed conversations with doctors, and Olivia's quiet tears. I held her hand through it all, witnessing her compassion for the man she once loved and finding no jealousy in my heart, only respect. When the doctor finally approached us in the waiting room, his expression told us everything before he spoke. The cancer has spread to his brain. Days, maybe hours left. He's asking for both of you. James was barely conscious when we entered his hospital room, machines beeping softly around him. His eyes fluttered open when Olivia took his hand, a faint smile crossing his pale face. My favorite people, he whispered. Olivia choked back a sob. Don't talk. Save your strength. He shook his head weakly. No point in that now. His gaze shifted to me. Ethan, take care of her. She pretends to be tough, but she needs someone strong. I will. I promised, meaning it more than ever. James reached for something on his bedside table, a small envelope. For both of you. Open it when I'm gone. The next few hours passed in quiet conversation whenever James was lucid enough to speak. He shared stories I'd never heard about Olivia's early career, made us laugh despite the circumstances, and extracted a promise that we would scatter his ashes from his beloved sailboat. As dawn approached, his breathing became more labored. The doctor suggested we say our goodbyes. Olivia leaned close, whispering something in his ear that brought a peaceful smile to his face. Then she stepped back, allowing me a moment with him. I bent down awkwardly. I wish we'd met differently, I said softly. Been friends instead of rivals, he supplied, his voice barely audible. We were never rivals, Ethan. She chose you long ago, and she chose well. Those were his last coherent words. He slipped away an hour later, his hand in Olivia's, mine on her shoulder. On the drive home, exhausted and emotionally drained, Olivia opened the envelope. Inside was a photo, not of James or Olivia, but of Olivia and me at our wedding. On the back, he'd written, "The real thing. Never forget it." Also enclosed was a key with a note. "The boat is yours. Take better care of it than I did." I looked at Olivia, stunned. He left us his boat. He knew how much you admired it, she said softly, and he wanted to give us a new beginning. We renamed the sailboat First Light the following week. It became our sanctuary, our place to rebuild what had been broken. 6 months after James's death, Olivia and I stood on the deck of First Light, watching the sunset paint the Charleston harbor in shades of gold and amber. We'd just returned from our monthly sailing trip, where we'd scattered the last of his ashes over his favorite diving spot, fulfilling our final promise to him. He would have loved today, Olivia said, leaning against the railing beside me. Perfect sailing weather. Not too windy, just enough to catch the current. I nodded, slipping an arm around her waist and pulling her close. It was amazing how much had changed since that fateful night when a single comment had nearly destroyed everything we'd built together. The boat had become our sanctuary, a floating refuge where we'd painstakingly rebuilt our relationship piece by piece, learning to be honest about our insecurities, our needs, our true selves. In the months since James's passing, we'd established new patterns, healthier ones. I no longer felt the need to constantly prove myself, to assert my prowess in every aspect of life. Olivia had created boundaries around her work, refusing assignments that would take her away for too long. We'd found balance, something I hadn't realized was missing until we nearly lost it all. Olivia had finished her series on women entrepreneurs, winning a regional award for journalism that put her in line for a promotion. I'd taken on a more supervisory role at Atlantic Marine, finding unexpected satisfaction in mentoring younger engineers instead of needing to prove myself with every project. "I have something to tell you," Olivia said suddenly, turning in my arms to face me. Her expression held that peculiar mix of nervousness and excitement that I'd come to recognize as a prelude to significant news. "What's that?" I asked, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face. She took my hand and placed it gently over her stomach. "We're having a baby. I confirmed it with the doctor yesterday." Joy surged through me, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was pure, untainted by ego or insecurity, just raw, beautiful emotion. "A baby? We're really—" She nodded, tears shimmering in her eyes. 12 weeks along, due in February. I pulled her into a gentle embrace, mindful of the precious life growing inside her. As we stood there, locked in each other's arms, she whispered, "James knew, you know, before he died." I told him when I whispered in his ear that last day in the hospital. Rather than the jealousy that would once have consumed me, I felt only gratitude that she'd shared such a moment with someone who'd been important to her. "What did he say?" "That we'd be great parents," she smiled, wiping away a tear, "and that he hoped our kid would have your engineering skills, but my common sense." I laughed, recognizing James's particular brand of humor. That sounded about right. As darkness fell and stars began appearing above us, I led Olivia to the stern of the boat, where I'd set up a small table with candles and the sparkling cider we now drank in place of wine. We sat together, planning our future in whispered conversations. Nursery colors, potential names, how to childproof a sailboat. "You know," Olivia said as we curled together in the boat's small cabin later that night, "I never imagined we'd end up here when I made that stupid comment months ago." "Neither did I admitted, stroking her hair. "But sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to realize what you really have." She nodded against my chest. "Promise me something, Ethan. Anything. Let's never stop talking. really talking to each other. No more games, no more masks. I promise, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. Just the real thing. Always. Outside our cabin window, the harbor lights reflected on the water, dancing like fireflies. First light rocked gently with the tide, cradling our small family as we drifted towards sleep and all the tomorrows yet to come.